Okay, so here we are in Illustrator. I've created a normal size document. This is 12 by 12 inches. You can create, just like last week, something that's about that same size. It doesn't matter too much. We're going to be file placing our image. I grab this scary shark here, and actually I don't want to do that. I want to place him at full size. Okay, and then we're going to zoom out, and just like last week, we're going to use our artboard tool to shrink our canvas size to whatever we need. Give them a little bit of extra space down there, and that looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to embed just like last time. We're going to lock that layer. We're going to create a new layer. All this stuff is the same as last week. Okay, now we're going to learn two main tools today. One is the eraser, which is very simple, and the other is the type tool. The type tool works a lot like any type tool that you've used in really any kind of design-based program, if you're familiar with that, and even to a certain extent, programs like Microsoft Word and other things where the main options that you have to change are things like font, font style, font size, etc. Really the creative part of this assignment is figuring out how to use the text. The actual manipulation of the text is really quite simple. So it's really going to be you looking at your image and figuring out where text goes, in what orientation, in what kind of like shapes, and what manipulations to the text you can do to give your Calligram shape and texture and color, and really just kind of like turn it into something more than just flat letters. So I'm going to try and do that a little bit. Let's start with, we're going to click. You notice that I'm in the type tool, and make sure that you're in the actual type tool instead of any of these others. A lot of these tools have what's called a flyout menu, so if you click and hold, a flyout menu pops up and there's a bunch of options. These are all interesting options. We're not going to use any of these, we're just going to use the regular type tool. And you'll see that when you click here, it just drops in what's called placeholder text. So this is Latin, and it just drops in a couple of words so it can show you where the text is, what font it is, what color it is, all that kind of stuff. Once we're still in the type tool, and we can click here and it will drop a cursor in there, just like in Microsoft Word or anything else. We can double click if we want to select a word, we can triple click if we want to select a line, etc. And the main thing we need to know, let's say, this isn't going to be very poetic, right? I haven't chosen a piece of text, but I'm just going to use whatever the piece of the shark is that I'm trying to describe. So at the moment, I'm going to do the gills, okay? So I'm going to type in gills. All right, and from here, before we do any kind of text manipulation, the key thing to do is to pick a font. Now, you'll notice through the examples that you can pick any font you want. Generally, a thicker font tends to work a little better, but it's really up to you. You can use literally any font you'd like. So I'm going to go with this one. Why not? All right. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and basically, I'm going to describe essentially this area right here, right, with these 5 letters. Okay, now how do I do that? Well, if you click on this word, you'll notice that we just get this red line underneath it. And if I'm using my direct selection tool, like in our last project, we used the direct selection tool to take vectors and to sort of like pull them out, change the points in the paths, bend the handles around and manipulate the curves, all that kind of stuff. But there's none of that here present, right? And the reason for that is because this is still a font. It's still letters. What we need to do is tell Illustrator that we want to change these letters from letters to shapes. It will look exactly the same, but basically what it'll do is it'll take the edge of every letter, and it will turn that into a vector. And then once that's a vector, we can modify it using our selection tools. The only thing we need to remember is that we have to pick the font before we change it to shapes. Because once we change it to shapes, you can't alter it like you would text. It's then going to be an abstract shape to the computer. It's no longer a font. Okay, so I've got my font here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my selection tool, the black arrow, and I'm going to make sure that right now it's unselected. I'm going to click on it, make sure that it's selected, make sure that I have the line underneath it and the bounding box around it. And then I'm going to go to Type and Create Outlines. So this function right here is going to let us, if you'll watch the word, when I click this, you'll see that it changed from no outline around the letters to the red vector outline around the letters. And what that means is we've changed these from a font to actual shapes. Okay, so from here I can start to manipulate these. Now if I have, I want to do a big, like stretch these out really tall. So what I'm going to do is use the bounding box here to do that. You'll notice that these kind of become a little less legible, and that's totally fine. It's not a big deal. They don't have to be. These words don't have to be completely legible. I'm not going to go through and look at all your words and see what it says necessarily. What's more important is that we create the actual image itself. And then I'm going to go to my direct selection tool here, and you'll notice that once I click the direct selection tool, the white arrow, it actually shows us all the points of our letters, right? Each one. I can click off and then click back on a specific letter if I want to move it. And I can do that with any letter I want. And from here, we can bend and shape and do whatever we want with our normal direct selection tool and the manipulation of individual points. Now, with the direct selection tool, in a situation like this, you may find yourself wanting to move multiple points at the same time. You can actually click and drag. You can kind of see this. There you go. You can see that box right there. So you can click and drag a box over multiple points, and it will allow you to move all of those points together, right? And then, for instance, say I want to try and get a curve here, but I can't get a curve because if I pull that out, you see there's no second handle here, and that second handle is what I need to get that curve. I can use, remember what I showed you last time, the convert, and that will give me that little anchor there, and that will allow me to get a bit of a curve. Okay. So it would take a little bit of time here, of course, to get all these curves, but you can see where we're headed with trying to manipulate all of these points to emulate the gills. Okay, let's try one more down here with the fins. So I'm going to click, I'm going to drop some type in, I'm going to type in my fins, I'm going to keep the same font. You can change font if you'd like, it's up to you. I'm going to select, I'm going to go type and create outlines. I'm going to use if I hover over the corner here till I get this crooked arrow, the bent arrow, I can rotate, and I'm going to rotate till it about fits there, and I'm going to blow up a little bit. I'm just going to kind of like get it to where I think it needs to be. That looks pretty good. We're going to manipulate all this stuff, okay? And then direct selection, and from here, we can start to individually manipulate these points. So a little less glorious than the examples I showed, but I'm obviously doing this much more quickly than those. From here, essentially what you want to do is figure out what kind of color you want. And this is going to be exactly the same thing. It looks different because you're using type, but it's exactly the same process as your character images, right? So for the fins, if I want to use my eyedropper here, I can select a letter and then eyedrop any color I want. Go back to my direct selection, eyedrop, pick a color, right? There is a nice little shortcut here. So if you are in, if you click the direct selection tool and then click the eyedropper tool, so you're in the eyedropper tool, if you press the command key on the keyboard, you'll notice that I immediately kind of toggle back to the arrow key. And this is while I have the key pressed down. So I can toggle back and forth by pressing the key on the keyboard. And what this allows me to do is press the control key, click a letter, let go, and then eyedrop the color. Press the command key, click a letter, let go, eyedrop the color. Okay. Now the examples I showed you, kind of, I'm gonna move this out of the way. So this looks okay, right? It's not too bad. It's not great. The colors don't really match. But depending on what your image is, you may find that you want to have, for example, like if we look at this fin here, what I'm seeing is obviously the fin goes down here. This shape right here is darker. Here's another lighter shape, another darker shape, right? And then the fin actually has a thickness to it. So this dark shape right here, it's very long and very thin, I might actually create using a whole different word. So a small word that's kind of like this shape, right, that goes all the way, or a length of words, right, a sentence, something like that, and have those be the dark color, and then the fins, you know, it might say fins up here, and these are the light color. And what that'll do is it'll kind of make that more three-dimensional, give it a little bit more depth, a little bit more texture. Okay, so you can always, just with these guilds, you can go back, you can select the letter here, and then eyedrop whatever color you'd like, and this is going to be how you create your entire image. If you want to, like some of the examples, you'll notice have a black silhouette behind them. You already know how to do that. You did that with your characters assignment. You're going to create a large silhouette shape by tracing the entirety of the exterior of the image. Fill that with black, and then you're just going to make sure that it's in the bottom of your layers, right? Remember our layer stacking order, okay? If you want to, the eraser, I'm going to show you the eraser tool. You don't have to use the eraser tool, and you actually won't really need to use the eraser tool, but I want to show it to you anyway. In case you want to use it, you can use, you select a letter and then use your eraser tool, and you can actually just go in and kind of freehand draw, and it will allow you to erase whatever you like. Now, like I say, it's not really necessary because you can still come in here and pick any point you like and manipulate it however you want. So it's basically doing the same thing with two different tools. I would recommend sticking with the direct selection tool because since that's brand new to you and it's such a big important tool, it's pretty crucial that you learn how to use that as best as possible. We're going to be using that. You will always need to use that in Illustrator more than anything else. Okay, so that's basically the assignment in a brief nutshell. You're going to be utilizing the text from your chosen piece. Where you put the text is up to you. It doesn't have to read left to right or up to down, up and down. It doesn't have to read, if you take a sentence, you don't have to put the whole sentence left to right. You can put words in different places. It's totally up to you. Just kind of try and figure out how to enjoy it, have a good time with it, and create something that looks nice. If you have any questions, again, like last week, feel free to email me, and I will help you as much as I can. If you need anything else, just let me know.